Back in 1962, Agri Supplies started with a simple creed: provide good, solid products at a fair price. Add in stellar customer service and you have the best option. There's 9 locations across North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia, and their robust online ordering makes it easy for anyone in the world to experience the Agri way. Don't hesitate. Go to agrisupply.com to find just the product you're looking for. The Carolina All Out Fence, Fur, and Feathers podcast is brought to you by Carolina All Out Apparel. Shop at our online stores for hats, shirts, koozies, and much more. Carolina All Out Apparel. Express the lifestyle you live.
It's the Carolina All Out Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast with Chris Douglas, where the conversation covers all things in the NC outdoors pertaining to hunting and fishing. Like and subscribe to get all the hunting and fishing info from the top guides, locals, and conservation agencies. Hear from biologists and professionals in the field about what things matter to you most. From the studios in Lemon Springs, North Carolina, your host, Chris Douglas.
And welcome to the Carolina All Out Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast, brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cooker. This is where people who love the outdoors come to find out about the great state of North Carolina and what she has to offer in the hunting and fishing space. I'm, of course, your humble host, Chris Douglas, and sitting in with me is Kyle Farwell, who is the sole proprietor of Farwell Fishing Guide Service. And they fish, you guys fish, or you fish, I should say, around the Raleigh area, and that's basically Jordan and Harris for right now, but you got bigger plans, right?
You got some plans in the future.
Thanks for coming in and hanging out with us, Kyle. It's great, man. We've known Kyle maybe a few months now.
Yeah.
Had a really good fishing trip with him. We're going to talk all about that, but let's talk about you, Kyle, and what got you started in this whole thing.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. This has been great, and excited for that show that'll come out in the summertime.
Yeah.
Really, a lot of this for me is I told myself, and I told a lot of people growing up, when I graduate college, I'm never gonna have a desk job. I'm just an outdoors person. I like being outside. I like being out in the woods. It's just how I am. I can't sit still at a desk. And ironically, for the majority of my life, graduating college, I've been at a desk job. Last June, I unfortunately got laid off from my primary job, and the whole guide service was on the side. I helped paid for daycare. Daycare is expensive, and it's always kind of been the dream. So made the decision to not go back to the corporate world and to bet on myself and do this whole guiding thing for full time. And it's been great. It's been amazing. It's growing really fast. There's been a lot happening. I'm trying to make sure that I can keep up with it, but that's a great problem to have. So things are going well over here right now. Okay,
let's go back to where your beginnings are. You're not from North Carolina. You're from another transplant. We won't hold that against you.
Yeah.
And you're from New Hampshire?
New Hampshire. Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about because you weren't in this fishing thing per se as a job. You had a very interesting. I thought it was interesting. So let's talk about that. What your job was before.
Yeah, so prior to this, I was in sales. I was a sales manager, and prior to that, I was in the skiing industry up in New Hampshire. Freestyle skiing, it's something that I picked up kind of late going into high school. My dad started me snowboarding when I was 7 years old, and then one day I told my dad, I said, "Hey, I wanna try skiing," and we went out, bought a pair of skis at the local ski shop, just an old pair of racing skis. Went out to the local little hill, and the first day I was on skis, I was skiing. I just picked it up really, really fast. It happened really quickly. And then I told my dad I want a pair of park skis. I want to get it in the park. I want to learn this whole thing. I like to go fast. I like to, being the younger daredevilish style, that's just kind of how I am. I like that adrenaline rush. And we went out, bought a pair of park skis, and I was there every single night. There's a local hill, shout out to Whaleback Mountain up in New Hampshire. It's a really small mountain. It's a nonprofit now. They're actually kind of trying to survive up there. It's been tough, for them, but that's where it all happened for me. My parents drove me there after school every single day, and the mountain would be open until 9 o'clock. So get out of school at 2:30. Be at the mountain by 4, and then basically ski 4 to 9 every single day. And I would be in the park. I would just be practicing.
Now explain to me. I'm completely ignorant to skis. So park skis are are they shorter and able to maneuver better, or what's the deal with that?
Yeah. So if you're in the skiing, or if you don't know the whole skiing world, a pair of park skis on both ends of the skis are flared up, so you can go backwards or forwards.
Gotcha.
Yep. So that kind of allows them to be, your freestyle skis, where you can land backwards. It's called, landing switch or riding switch, and it really grabbed my attention because there's just something different. Like I like to go fast, but the whole going off the jumps and learning the whole rails situation, and it just happened really quickly, where that very next year I joined a freestyle team, and we went to Quebec up in Canada, and that's where the Canadian freestyle team, they train up there, and they had the water ramps and the Olympic trampolines, and we were training year round. Qualified for Junior Olympics, competed in that, and a bunch of other, well-known competitions. And then I went off to college, and I no longer had a coach. I was kind of all on my own at that point.
Right.
I couldn't afford to have, the local academies that a lot of these kids went to, and I started late. So picking it up really late, just kind of had to do my own thing, and I still competed and graduated. I actually was supposed to move out to Utah my junior year of college.
Okay. Got
accepted into Westminster. That's where Park City, Utah, is out there, and it's beautiful. A bunch of my buddies were out there, but I couldn't afford the out-of-state tuition. Fast forward, graduated college, and I had that burden of when they give you that slip and it says this is how broke you're going to be for a while. I was like, that's a lot of debt and a lot of weight on my shoulders. Like, man, like this is a huge burden.
Right.
So I graduated college, and I committed. My wife, we got together my junior year of college. I graduated. When I graduated, she was going into her senior year. She actually did her senior year all online for me.
Right.
So that way I could, we moved to Southern New Hampshire, and I got a job, down there working in the healthcare industry as a recruiter. And once I paid off my student loans, I said, I'm out of here. I was ready to leave, and worked at another small tech company. And then my wife and I decided to move down to North Carolina. Still get the best of all worlds, the seasons. Florida's just a little too hot to do that year round. And North Carolina kind of provides it all. And, since we've been down here, kind of fell in love with it. And I don't see myself leaving North Carolina, to be honest with you. Maybe I'll buy property in another state, but North Carolina is kind of is where it's at for me.
Well, I'm partial to North Carolina, so I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. We post some things about North Carolina, and people get a little weird, and they go, "Let them know that North Carolina is full."
Yeah.
Like, we can't take any more.
I hear a lot of people say that. Everyone's like, everyone's coming from the Northeast, and I'm like, yeah, I'm one of them. I'm one of them.
Well, and I mean, it's a great state. It really is, and we obviously are here to promote and push the natural resources, and of course now you are deeply involved in that, and so we're going to get around to talking about all that sort of thing. So Kyle has now gone through from skiing, which is quite removed from what you do now.
Yeah.
And but one thing I noticed when we were fishing together, the professionalism that you gained through sales and all the other stuff, and then of course the enthusiasm through skiing, I saw as a great mix on the boat. And we're on the boat a lot with different guides and people, and you can tell when people are have that professional flair about them, and Kyle is one of those. So we're going to be talking about Kyle's expertise, especially crappie fishing, because we had that experience, and then also. You'll see it for yourself when you come and book with him. So that's another opportunity there. So when you're back, you're in North Carolina, you're here now. What spurred the you said maybe there was the little extra money to pay for childcare.
Yeah.
But that was you fishing. Where did your fishing start?
Yeah. So my dad, it all started, my dad, he started bringing me out on the boat with him when I was 2 years old. And, as I was growing up, got to a point where he was going on this fishing trip every single year to northern New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And I would always be so mad that he wouldn't be taking me. And when I was 7 years old, he finally took me up to northern New Hampshire. Not many people have ever heard of it. It's called Errol, New Hampshire, middle of nowhere. Unfortunately, just like everything, it's growing really fast. It's got a lot more exposed. It used to be one of those areas where you would rarely see anyone frequently.
Right.
Like you could go a whole day and not see a single person. Very remote. And now, Fish and Game and all these clubs have started building the ATV trails up there and the snowmobile trails, and it's gotten really popular, and it's getting built up more, which is sad because that's one of those sentimental places that I have that will always be there with me, that my dad and I went up there every single year starting when I was 7 years old.
What were you catching?
Trout.
What kind of trout? Rainbows?
Red, rainbows, browns, and your typical brook trout. And every now and then we get into a landlocked salmon. And right around when I was 10 years old, he got a fly rod in my hand, and that's when it all took off. I was addicted. And all the way 17 years straight, we went up together. And my dad went up 27 years straight. So he had been going up 10 years prior to me going up there. And that's really where it all kicked off for me. So we were staying on a campground called the Androscoggin. We're right on the river right there. And I would see these guys in these boats with other people. And I asked my dad, I said, what are they doing? He goes, oh, those are local fly fishing guides. And I said, I'm going to do that someday. And I would have never imagined it would be down here in North Carolina ever, right? Like New Hampshire's where it's at. That's my home. That's where I'm from. That's where all my memories, for the most part, majority of my life were made and built upon. And so fast forward, we moved down here, and we moved down here in August or late July of 2019. I want to say in 2021, in November. It was November. I was bass fishing because that's really what it was about. Around here, you ain't got much trout fishing.
Right.
It's just not. You're just not where.
Got to go far west.
You're gonna go west. And I was throwing a drop shot on some laydowns, and I started catching some crappie. And I was like, okay. It's like, when the bass fishing's slow today. That night, I went out and bought an ultralight setup, bought some crappie stuff, and actually, one of my biggest supporters, before I even started guiding, he's up in Michigan, and he runs Badass Baits, Badass with 2 Z's at the end. He's supported me from the very, very beginning, and he said, let me send you some crappie baits. So I started taking that stuff out, and I started catching crappie. I'm a little kid at heart, Chris. If I'm catching fish, I'm happy. The bass fishing, is way different down here than it is up north in New Hampshire.
Sure, yeah.
I can be up in New Hampshire and see a smallmouth 15 feet down, roaming. Out here, you got 2 feet max visibility for the most part. So it was different. It was very, very different. And I started catching crappie, and I just started learning them more and more. And it just turned into me wanting to go out where I'd have bass stuff on the boat, but I would always find myself getting those crappie rods in my hand. And I don't know what it was. I think because I've caught some big bass down here. I've got 2 double digits. One that went 10.01, one that's 10.33 is my biggest bass to date. And don't get me wrong, I love bass fishing, but the crappie is just really taken over because it's a blast, and especially that I'm really getting into these big crappie. I had one that was almost 3 pounds this past early spring, late winter.
Wow.
And it's a real addiction. It's a real addiction now. So, I told my wife a couple years ago, I said, I think I might want to try this guiding thing. I was going on TikTok live and posting, and everyone's like, do you offer trips? And it kind of sparked my interest of, I've always talked about wanting to do this. I wonder if I could do it, down here in North Carolina. So, the biggest challenge for a lot of people is making that leap, right?
Yep.
It's not easy. Even if it's a side gig, right? Even if it's just, a side hustle that you got going on.
That's right.
And especially financially, right? Like it's not easy. I told my wife, I said, I'm going to get my LLC. I'm going to get everything together, get my captain's license. And I got it all. And I ran my first guide trip in November. So we're in 2023. So we're coming up on 2 years. Not that long ago, but it's grown and it's exploded really fast. So I've been busy, but that's kind of where it all started, from seeing the guides out there to saying I want to do it to now doing it and having it be something that's growing and I'm doing full time. It's a lot. It's tough not to know what income you're going to bring in, every month, But everything. If everything was easy, everyone wouldn't be doing it.
That's
right.
right.
As a cliche saying goes. But it's been incredible. I'm very grateful for how things have kind of panned out, and I'm a true believer in if things are meant to be, they're meant to be, and we're making things happen.
Coming from a guy who's living by faith on a regular basis,
Yeah.
I know where you're at. You basically are creating something out of thin air.
Yeah.
It's a resource that's out there. We found that, people love to hunt and fish, and they like to see content of things that they can do in their backyard. And so that's our little niche. And now, talking to you, you found your niche, and it's crappie. It's a fish that might not typically doesn't get over 12 inches long, you know? And now here you are guiding for it, which is a great story, man. It's awesome. It's awesome. And quite the risk taker Kyle is. So, except on the boat, he's very careful. He's a captain now.
Yes,
so
yes, sir. I got to be careful. Got to be really careful. But that's part of just the teaching aspect of it too.
We definitely want to get into that. I tell you what, let's go take a break, and we'll be back in just a minute with some more Carolina All Out Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast, of course. But we're going to be talking with Kyle Farwell of Farwell Fishing Guide Service. And he's got some really interesting things that he does on the boat that we'll be talking about, and we'll see just how much controversy we can stir up. We'll be right back.
Keeping up with Carolina All Out is easy. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Like and follow to keep up with the All Out crew and our friends with posts, stories, and reels that will inspire you to get outdoors. There's some things in life that just makes you feel good when you see it, and something cooking in an old black cast iron skillet does it for me. There's nothing like it, and if it does it for you, then my friends over at Carolina Cooker have just the equipment you need for outdoor cooking, camping, kitchen accessories, and food processing. Check out carolinacooker.com to order from their huge selection, and also find a store near you that carries the brand born in the Carolinas. Carolina Cooker, tools, cooks, legends, you create the tradition. And we're back, and we're talking with Kyle Farwell of Farwell Fishing and Guide Service here, and drink a little chili water. If anybody knows anything about chili water, Kyle just tried it for the first time.
That chili water is good. I'm not gonna lie. It's the first time I've had it. Chris brought it in, and it's legit.
It's a great tasting water. They're new partners of ours, and if you've ever seen the bagged ice out there called Carolina Ice, which we love it because it says Carolina and we're Carolina All Out. But anyway, they've started this new product here called chili water. It's not going to have any of those forever chemicals in it. It is just straight up good tasting water, and we love it. And you're going to see more of it as we're on the podcast and on the show. But we've been talking with Kyle about his beginnings, and now at this point in his story, he's made it to North Carolina. He has taken the big risk, and now he is guiding for fishing. And right before we went to the break, he was talking about he enjoys the education aspect of it, and we really, really enjoyed that part of it because you could tell he's an educator at heart, an instructor at heart, and that just comes in so well, especially if you're trying to learn, or you have a great interest in the fishing that you're doing. So I had some notes here that I want to make sure that I don't get off track here because we want to cover everything. With your teaching, it's all about relationship. We were talking about that, talking about relationships. So with this fishing here, and we'll get into the nuts and bolts, guys, hang with us, but the relationships that you have started through this whole process, talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's, I've learned a lot about myself doing this, and doing it full time and trying to build something from nothing, right? As you know. And things have just I've learned and have gotten a lot of feedback that I have the personality for this, and it's natural, right? Like the whole education piece of it, whether you're looking to get on the boat and learn or not, you're probably going to learn because it just naturally want to help. People need to understand when they're going out on the boat why they're catching the fish, right? Like it's not just so much. I feel like some people kind of just hop on the boat and they just expect that I'm just going to put them on fish. They're just going to reel in fish and they're going to leave the boat and they're gone. Right. A lot of it for me comes into here's what we're going to be doing today. Here's why we're doing it. and here's the things that we may have to do if it doesn't work out. Because at the end of the day, it's still fishing, and the relationships that I've gotten to build has just come with the short period of time I've been doing it, and I feel like I try to be approachable, relatable. I try to be that guide and captain that will help people and not keep things super quiet where I'm not going to tell anyone anything. I feel like, especially nowadays, it's hard to get information.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Even though we have Google.
Yeah. You're not lying there, Chris.
Yeah.
And part of it for me is building that reputation and brand of the guide and captain that's willing to help, educate, and to be very honest with you, if I'm not telling people anything and I don't have enough stuff to tell people because I'm afraid someone's going to go fish it, I probably shouldn't be doing this, right? A lot of this comes with a lot of time on the water, a lot of time off the water, doing research, kind of taking notes and putting those patterns together. And there's a lot that goes into it, and building this in as quickly as it's growing. I get a lot of people that get on the boat that I've just been, you kind of click with, right? And there's some people that you just don't, and that's just the way it goes. You're not going to click with everyone.
Sure.
It's just we as human beings. It's just not the way it's not gonna go the way we want it to every single time.
Right.
But I would say honestly, about 95% of the people, maybe even higher, 97% of the people that get on my boat, we have a good time. People are happy, and they get off the boat and they're wanting to come back, right? And that's what it's all about for me. Like, literally, part of it, and on my website will say the goal for me is to have you come on my boat. I'm going to educate you. I want you to know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and I want you to want to tell other people and come back on the boat, right? Like, that's my goal. And meeting you through Steve, who I know, and when I first moved down here, I posted on Facebook, and you see people at the boat ramp all the time, and especially on social media. Social media is very, 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 very powerful.
It is.
And posting into those groups all the time, people will reach out and you start to talking to people, and I see Steve. I actually saw him on the water fishing a Tuesday night tournament last night. And
Steve Loper. Steve's a great
Loper.
guy.
Yeah. He's the one that helped introduce me to you.
Right.
And like, that's been incredible. People that have now once were clients are now friends. And I that there's kind of a fine line there that I think some people don't realize, where just because you come out on the boat a couple of times doesn't mean you're going to get free trips for the rest of your life. And like, I think there's a fine balance that I have to walk, but there's some people that you click with, and it's like, you're my friend for forever now. Like, we click really well. We can get together, we can go out and go fishing, even if it's been months. Like, you just kind of get right back in the rhythm and groove. And that's kind of what it's been all about. I know, earlier we were talking about, I got on my first Tom, and that was through a client that, shout out Luke and Chris. They came out with me on a trip. We started talking about kind of turkey hunting. They're like, oh, we're all about it. And I was like, man, I said, because I'm not going to go hunt public land. I've almost up in New Hampshire, I've had some scary instances with public land and people just being careless. And they're like, oh, we'll let you know, if we're on them, we're going to get on them, you're going to get down here. And I was like, yeah, okay. And, some people have said that, and I don't hear anything, which is fine. I know people work really hard for the stuff that they've got. They've paid for it. They've put in their time. They've earned that.
Yeah.
And he reached out literally on opening day. They tripled up, and he said, "What are you doing next Saturday?" And I was like, "I think I've got a trip." And for some reason, like I mentioned, if things are meant to be, things are meant to be. I didn't have a trip on a Saturday, which was very weird. And I said, "I'm blocking off right now, and I will be there." And that was a blast. We got on my first Tom, and I'm so addicted. I can't wait for next year. Yeah, it's on.
It's all over.
It's done. I told my wife, I said, every turkey season now, I said, if I don't got trips, and she kind of gave me that look. And one of my other buddies, Dustin, has helped me a lot getting on my first deer last year, and it's those relationships are everything, and the connections that you have and that you build and you make are really what make this thing really fun, and where if you love what you do, it's not a job. And getting up, especially in the summertime at 4:00, 4:30 every morning, it becomes to feel like a job a little bit, because you just get exhausted. So taking care of yourself really well is important, but everything is just falling into place, and I'm literally living my dream right now. I always said I want to be in the fishing industry growing up, and I had a family member actually say, fishing, like, no. And that stuck with me, Chris, like my whole, like, I thought about that. And, I turned to my dad, I said, why not? And he was like, yeah, don't worry about it. And well, I'm doing it now and it's happening. We're making things happen.
Well, it's awesome. And he's quite the guide. We had a fantastic time, and we're going to get into it now. We're going to get into, because everybody's been waiting to hear, what all happened for the show and that sort of thing. But we booked a trip. What month was that?
That was March, early March.
Early March.
It was early March because I had a bass trip the following week with a couple NHL players. I was telling you about.
Yeah, that's right.
That was
in town
really
playing
cool.
playing against the
Hurricanes.
So, early March, and Farrington Point. We went out there at the Farrington boat ramp, and some things that we learned there, and we'll get into this, is with the live scope. Now we're gonna be talking about live scoping because and that was one of the things that Steve threw out to us, is he's really good at live scoping, and he really likes to teach that, and talk to people about that. And you guys know our show, Carolina All Out, is although it has a big entertainment aspect, we do like to teach. We do like to see people learn things from it. And we do get people that say, I watched the show 3-4 times or however many times they watched it, to be able to kind of learn what was being done there.
Yep.
So anyway, it was very interesting to us. And so I think one of the first things that I saw that was very interesting to me is a large crappie. You were able to tell what that was by just looking at it. You've seen these profiles so many times on your screen. And you were in that thing was out there in the middle of nothing, with no bait or no structure to orient around, and he was just there. Yep. And that's a fish that you wouldn't know if you didn't have live scope that is even there. Now, did we catch that fish? No. But potentially there are times when you can do that. You can catch these guys.
We almost did.
He turned on it.
He turned on it, And I think I did miss him once. He didn't. It was that early March time frame where I tell a lot of people the most difficult times are the transition times. The transition times being that fall to winter transition where the lakes start to turn over. If people don't know what that means, like in the summertime,
tell everybody what that means.
In the summertime and in the warm months, the surface is warmer than the deeper you go. Right, the deeper you go, the cooler the water will typically get. Well, when the water the lake starts to turn over, we get that warmer going into that cooler weather. It gets to a point where that thermocline is gone, and the temperature is just about the same. It starts to mix, and it's about that same everywhere throughout the lake. Well, these fish aren't going to be in one specific area. They'll scatter. And when they scatter, it gets tough. It gets difficult because they're not pinpointed. There's no reason for them to be on a specific piece of structure or a specific creek channel or hump or whatever. Right. So when they turn over, in those transition times can be tough. And the same thing going from winter into spring. They start to leave their winter areas. They're moving. They're scattered. The lake is turning over again. The water's starting to warm up, and it can be kind of difficult. When we hit it around that time where we were just at the tail end of that transition and we had a front that came through 2 days prior, which of course, that's the way it happens. And, I know I sent you a text a couple days later, said, why couldn't this weather have held out? Because that 2 days later, I had 16 crappie over 2 pounds, and that one that was almost 3 pounds was in that day, and that's just, the timing deal. That's how it goes. But those transition times can be the toughest. So these fish that are kind of just roaming around, when we were out there, they weren't holding on anything. They're really just around some bait. They're kind of in, suspended in that little bit deeper water. But those big girls that time of year, that's really what I'm targeting. That's what I'm all about. I'll literally tell clients, I'm going after big fish right now. If you want to catch a lot, like now's not the time. Like book in June through October, we'll go catch 100 fish in a trip.
Right.
But because I really take advantage of those fish, those females who have eggs, and they're feeding on shad. They're getting ready before they move up. They're suspended. They're hungry. They're aggressive. And as that sun got up, as people will see in that show, we started to figure them out a little bit more.
Yeah.
So.
It was good. It was a good time. Now let's break down live scoping a little bit. It's a technology that's been out for some time now, and we've done some shows with live scoping on striped bass is one of the shows I know we've done, and it was fun. It was interesting. We've done some on smallmouth. And but a live scope. So give us the explanation for people. There's most people's going to know, but we need to give these
Yeah,
details.
yeah, it's one of those controversial things that's out there right now, but it's one of those. So basically, it's forward-facing sonar. It's live imaging. So Live Scope is the Garmin version. Then you have Active Target, which is Lowrance, and then Mega Live, which is Humminbird. They all got their
proprietary thing.
You got it. You got it. So I have Garmin Live Scope on my boat. So your traditional sonar is going to be your 2D sonar, your side imaging, your down imaging, which is going to be your transducer on the back of the boat. So what you're doing with that is you're slowly idling, scanning over areas, using your mapping, looking at contours to see where can you find, whether it's a rock pile or a ditch or a saddle or a tree, stump, whatever down there. And it's a delay, right? Until you go over that, you're not going to see that on your screen. So forward-facing sonar is on the front of your boat. I have mine on my trolling motor. A lot of people may put theirs on a separate pole mount, so you can still use your anchor lock or spot lock on your trolling motor. But I have mine on my trolling motor, and it will shoot a beam wherever your trolling motor is facing. There's the transducer that is mounted on the trolling motor, facing the same direction that the arrow on your trolling motor is pointing. So wherever you're looking with your trolling motor and you see it on your screen, you know what direction those fish or brush pile, whatever it is, because that's where you're facing your trolling motor head.
Right.
And it is live, like I said, live sonar, live imaging. You will literally see a tree and bait, fish, whatever, swimming around that tree. And you can use that to your advantage to learn how are they set up, how are they positioned, are they moving fast, are they not, are they tight? There's a lot. That's the biggest thing that I love about it. It's like I use it as a tool to learn. Does it help you catch fish? Yes, right? Like I'm not going to lie to you. Like yes, It helps you catch fish and be more efficient. And as people will see, it's not easy.
It's not 100%.
It's not 100%.
No, not at all. We found that out pretty quick there. And one of the things if people are trying to visualize this who aren't watching the video, because we'll put some video up of what it looks like for people, but I kind of liken it to a flashlight in a way, because whenever the beam is pretty narrow as it's going out. And so when you swing it over something, all of a sudden, if it's a tree, a structure, fish, or whatever, it kind of lights up, and it doesn't necessarily, it looks pretty close to a fish sometimes, depending on how close and how much, less trash in the water or whatever it may be. But you do get the sense of when that lure, you can literally see that lure hit the water, and Kyle, of course, is directing us, okay, bring it down, drop it a little bit more, pull it in. Yeah. And then you can watch that lure go by that fish. Now, I couldn't tell at times if I was going behind the fish or in front of the fish. Yep. So that's maybe a thing. Yep. I don't know. So
yeah, a lot of it, like I said, you can learn a lot. Do they want to move? And I'll tell you right now, the best thing anyone can do to learn, the number one thing is to go out and do it yourself. Right? Like I can help you cut that learning curve, no problem. But you will learn by just going out and putting in the time. And I think some people, and I understand, I used to be a weekend warrior. I get it. I understand that. But putting in the time is going to be the best way that you're going to teach and learn, yourself.
Yeah. So whenever we, referring back to the show itself, Kyle has a number of places that he likes to target or that he knows through experience and that sort of thing. So we pull up on maybe say some structure that you're aware of.
Yep.
How are you approaching that when you come up to it and you're looking at it with you're seeing fish are there and whatever. Yeah. So go for it.
Yeah. One thing like that I've learned about the crappie out here on the lakes around Raleigh anyway is most of the time, they're not as skittish as many people would think. There's some times where I will be only 10 feet away from a fish, and we had that one at the very end of the show.
Yes.
The big one, the one that was over 2 pounds, practically eat under the boat.
Yeah.
Right. Sure I'm excited to watch that and see that, because that was cool. When the first spot that we started on, I knew these fish were roaming. They're going to be, suspended over the river channel or pretty close to that creek channel. And I'll set my range way out, about 100 feet out from the boat, and I'll kind of look, and I'll see, all right, there's some fish, and I'll dial it back so we can get a little bit better detail about, anywhere between 40 to 60 feet. But I like to be around 40 to 50 feet away from that fish if I can be.
That puts you in range of casting, I guess, for your clients, because not everybody can cast like they need to, I guess.
Not everyone can cast a 16th ounce crappie jig 80 feet, 70 feet. So as I'm approaching these fish, I'm looking, there's a few things that I'm analyzing, and a lot of it is just related to their behavior. Is there bait in the area? Are they chasing? Are they just sitting there? What is the fish doing? And this is the learning part that like I use it as a tool that I'm talking about, because it's not as easy as drop your trolling motor in the water, put live scope on, you're just catching fish, right? Like we pulled up on a couple of these fish early on, and they were good. Like they were at least a pound and a half, pound and 3/4. Some of them were pushing, over 2 pounds for sure. And I'm trying to looking at how are they responding to the boat? How are they responding to me throwing the bait out there and it hitting the water? Because sometimes they'll get spooked, and especially when these fish are pressured, they'll hear that 16th ounce jig hit the water and they're gone. Right. But with the time of year that we were hitting, they weren't going to be that. They weren't that skittish. They were more so just locked down.
Right.
Front come through. They didn't really want to move. So that made us I was analyzing that, and that's where we kind of got the big poles out, Chris, right? And we got the 12-footer and kind of just dangling above their head and holding it there. And there's sometimes where you would hold it there and hold it and hold it and hold it. And all of a sudden they would come up and they would eat it like they haven't eaten all winter.
Right.
And the reason for that is because their metabolism slows down in the wintertime. They're not going to use all that energy if they're not sure if they're going to be able to get that bait.
Right.
And that's why they would hit it so hard. And there was sometimes that I remember we were out there, they were hitting it so hard that you may not even feel the bite because they're hitting
kind
it
of push
so
it up,
hard.
I guess. Yeah. It's kind of when they hit it, boom, and it's like nothing was there.
You wouldn't feel it.
Right.
They would just straight slackline that thing, and you would not feel it. So that's kind of what I'm looking at to determine how am I going to approach these fish.
Right.
That will also depend on what areas I'm going to go to or not go to based on, some of the patterns that I'm seeing throughout the time of just being out on the water.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, let's go to break real quick. I want to talk about, when we come back, about the fish in the water column, because you made a point about maybe there's a certain place in water column they're not eating, and you know that, and you're not even going to waste your time. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more about crappie fishing, live scoping, and we're doing it all with Kyle Farwell of Farwell Fishing and Guide Service. We'll be right back.
Is it because of me?
Hey, make sure you watch Carolina All Out on our YouTube channel and catch us on Alive TV Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. And coming this summer, we'll be airing nationally on the Pursuit channel 4 times a week, spreading the good news to all who will listen about our great state and what she has to offer. At some point in your life, I'm betting you have probably thrown a piece of bait on a hook into one of our great state's 7 amazing sounds. If you have, you know how magical they are. Well, that magic is under threat and has been for a long time. That's where the North Carolina Marine and Estuary Foundation comes in, an organization dedicated to improving management practices, educating the public, and developing practical solutions. They want to see North Carolina become the premier fishing destination in the country. And I do too. Visit ncmeffoundation.org to learn more about this wonderful organization and how you can do your part in protecting the 7 jewels of North Carolina and a whole lot more.
Baby, why you leaving me?
And coming back from a break, we are having a good time here on the Carolina All Out Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast, drinking that chilly water and enjoying the company of Kyle Farwell. And Kyle's a transplant. We'll go ahead and say it. Don't hold it against him. He's a good guy. We've had a lot of good times. We've had one good time with him, and I expect we'll have some more as time goes on because he's doing my thing. He's crappie fishing, and he's crappie fishing not far from the house, which is Jordan Lake and Harris Lake. And we'll have to do that sometime.
Yeah.
Do Harris when it's a good trip there. So anyway, we were talking about all sorts of cool things that he's learned with the live scope and the controversy that surrounds the live scoping, because I think there's some tournament trails and that sort of thing who may be making some decisions against live scoping and that sort of stuff. But as far as a guide is concerned, I think it's fantastic. And I think even when we posted a photo of the trip and we made mention of live scope, I think someone said anybody can catch fish with live scope. And I'm like, exactly. Because I need all the help I can get in catching a fish. Yeah. And, but I can tell you right now, just because you have a live scope, absolutely can be the most frustrating thing, because I remember we casted to some and we never caught them. They were big fish sitting right there. I wouldn't have known they were even there if we didn't have live scope, and then we knew it. Now it's made this big frustration for us. But one thing I did see is we passed by a fish at one point, and you said, yeah, that one is probably not, or that one is in a particular zone. So let's talk about water column and their willingness to bite.
So understanding their behavior is everything, right? And like I said, the frustrations of people with live scope saying that it's easy, anyone can catch them, like, yes, but also no, right? Like there's times where some people will say, that's easy, no problem, like it's a cheater box, whatever,
Right.
I would challenge those people, especially those days where it's not easy, to go out there and go win a tournament when it is tough and you have all the tools that you need. If it's that easy, go win a tournament doing it. It's just, and a lot of that comes down to understanding their behavior and knowing, and live scope will help, such as, these fish in the water column. I think when we pulled up on some of these fish, a lot of these ones that wanted to eat were higher in the water column. Versus these ones that were lower, just sitting there, and they wanted nothing to do with it. Now, it's not that these fish wouldn't eat. A lot of them just came down to, depending on where you're at in the different part of the lake, right? Like different water temperature, different clarity. They could be in a completely different mood, as we saw on that day. We were on one part of the lake where they just were not active. And as soon as we got on a different part of the lake where they wanted to eat, we were catching them, and it really started to turn on. A lot of these fish that we were really trying to target were high in the water column. These fish were going to be more active and more willing to move and eat our baits. And that's exactly how we ended up getting on some of these fish. Earlier in the morning, these fish weren't as high in the water column. These big females need vitamin D for their eggs as they are developing and getting ready to eventually move up and spawn and drop those eggs. Right. So these fish that are higher up in the water columns were getting some of that sun. If they can get some of that vitamin D and also feed at the same time, they get a 2-for-1.
Right.
That's what these fish want. Especially as you have warming water temperatures, these big females. I mean, it got to a point, Chris, where especially we saw in that really good fish at the end of the trip too, where like they're just ready to pop.
Right.
And every year is going to be different. This year was a little bit more delayed because we had a tough winter. This winter was in the 6 years I've been down here, the toughest I've experienced. It was the longest winter. It was the coldest that stayed. Normally I've noticed in January, it will last 2-3 weeks where you'll have some temperatures at night in maybe the 20s and 30s. And we had some of the 30s hitting in December, even late November. And I would literally notice some of these fish moving out and then moving right back because we had some warm weather. So where these fish were sitting in the water column was literally changing overnight. And that day that we were out there, we found that sweet spot where it was really, they were as high as 3 feet under the water. And we're suspended over, sometimes over 22 foot, but they were between like 3 and 8, 3 and 9 feet. And those ones that were deeper, 10 to even 20, weren't those, they just didn't want to eat. So you find that area of where do they want to eat? And you try to keep running that pattern. Even if you don't have live scope, you can still use your down imaging to see where are you marking fish. All right, I know I need to set these rods if you're long lining or tight lining, whatever. I need to set these, these lines anywhere between 3 and 9 foot. And then you're starting to troll around and hopefully, get into them. But live scope's my deal. I love that live scope.
Yeah.
Just learning it is the most that I love about it.
You have to, when you see the reaction of a fish on a retrieve or maybe a color, a style of lure, you can see, it's very interesting to see their heads come up, kind of pointing upward and then, kind of drifting and watching and then, but that's exciting now.
Yeah.
It's exciting when all of a sudden you see that big rush to the bait.
Yep.
I find that very, very exciting for me. I'm not a big video gamer or anything like that, but if there was a video game to play, I like this one.
That's what I say. I say it's the best video game out there. With the people that say that they don't like live scope, if there's one I could play, it is the best one out there. And like I said, it gets a lot of hate, and like you mentioned, it's getting banned in some tournaments and whatnot. But it's a tool at the end of the day. It's a tool just like anything else.
Right.
I think I read somewhere too where some people are like it's hurting the population, and this is just what I read online, Chris. But a mature black crappie, because that's what we have out here. We have some white crappie around here, but they're just not very prevalent. Like black crappie can lay over 150,000 eggs. right? Now, what's the survival rate of that? I also read it's less than 2%. If that's true, I don't know. I'd love to learn the statistics about what we found around here, but there is a lot of crappie in these lakes.
Yeah.
And the bass have taken more of a hit over time. Just pressure, in my opinion, is a big part of it. You know, it's not as easy to go out there and catch 30 pounds. You know, like when I first moved down here, if you didn't have a 30-pound bag for bass in a tournament,
right.
you may not even be in the money for some of them, you know, but for sure not winning a tournament. Now it's like, you know, those 30-pound bags are a little bit tougher to come across. These crappie, on the other hand, I mean, like I said, I had that one day where I had 16 over 2 pounds. It was every single cast almost. And that one where I finally thought I had that 3-pounder, and it was 2 pounds, 14 ounces. And I can't tell you how many times I weighed that thing to see if it would bounce and hit 3 pounds, but it kept locking at 214, you know, which around here, that's a giant.
Yeah.
That's a giant.
A really nice fish. Now, we were talking about being able to keep that bait in front of them. And that's creating somewhat of a reactionary bite, I guess, because maybe they might not be super, like you said, metabolism and that sort of thing. So talk to me about that reactionary bite, or how you're trying to do this.
Yeah. When you're positioning on these fish, and let's say you're throwing that bait out there, you know, we started with the spinning rods, 6'6" spinning rods. You know, we were throwing it out there and we would bring it right over their nose. Right. And this goes back to, it's not as easy as casting out there and they're going to eat it every time. Because how many times we casted some of these fish and they didn't move.
Right.
They did, like,
it would be on them. There.
You would never know you would never say that fish actually wanted to see that bait.
I think I remember we may have that in the show where I remember actually bumping one.
Oh, yeah.
And he you know, that's finally made him move, but he moved away. He was gone because we were getting so close. But we were just over and over and over again. But that would just hoping. And that would happen sometimes after all those casts. All of a sudden, you just take it.
It's the way it goes. You know, you find that one fish that's in the mood that wants to eat, and it's like, all right, that fish is willing to chase. But you know, the majority of the time in the late winter, early spring, these fish don't want to move as much, especially post frontal. Is the stuff that I've learned out here. So that's when we got the big rods out. You know, we got the 12-footer, and I eventually want to get some, you know, even 16s, which some people are like, that is ridiculous. But to be honest with you, a lot of what I use them for is being able to hold that bait right above them and allowing that fish to make that decision to, I'm going to eat that.
Right.
And like that can be all you need to be able to get that fish to want to commit, because they don't have to really work super hard for it. They see it as an easy meal.
Yeah, give him plenty, all the time he needs to make
all the time. You know, and like you could hold that bait over their head for upwards of a minute, literally a minute. You're just waiting. It's like, just eat it, and it'll slowly come up, slowly look at that bait, and it'll just stare at it. And then all of a sudden, you'll see this burst of energy of that fish just knocking that bait, and you won't feel it because they knock so much slack in that line.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's so fun. It's so addicting. I mean, that time of year, if you want to catch a really big crappie or have a good chance of catching 2-pounders, and that's what we did, you know, it's basically that February into early April really is the sweet spot, weather dependent, right? The weather's the number one factor.
Yeah, and that's tough in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And March can be
all
anywhere.
over.
We can be snowing, we can be bright and sunny. It's a nutsy time. We're doing the Dixie Deer Classic during that first part, and it's always, we don't know what we're going to get from year to year.
Yeah, I was actually at the expo, the Raleigh Fishing Expo in January. It was the first time I had, you know, I mentioned the relationships that I've built. One of my clients, he's actually my 4th ever client that came out. You know, we had a great trip, got him on some bass, and, you know, he actually helped me get into that show. And the reason why I mentioned that is because we had that snow.
Yes.
The last 2, it was Saturday and Sunday. And we got the results from after that as being a vendor there. And I think it was 34% less attendance than overall than previous years, because the snow just really messed that up.
Over the years, that show can be plagued with that. And it's unfortunate because it's a great show. I love the Bass
awesome.
and Saltwater show. We haven't been able to make it there the past couple of years. We're going to try to do it this year. And I'd love to see, because sometimes I feel like I don't have the following in the fishing side of things, but we're always surprised because people do. It's like I tell people, you don't have to know how to fish all that great to have an outdoor show. I'm proof of it.
You're a good fisherman, Chris.
I do okay. I do okay, and I'd love to be better at it. And so whenever you have an opportunity to fish with someone like Kyle, who's willing to teach and willing to, the patience is there. And another thing about it, I'm going to say, is the encouragement. Kyle does extremely good job of encouraging you, and it's like, you're on them, you got them, great fish. Those are, I call, hallmarks to great guides out there, because that is part of the game. I mean, you got people, you deal with all sorts of people, I'm sure.
Yeah.
People who've never fished before, to people who are probably booking with you so they can, learn some new spots or learn some new techniques or things like that, who are advanced fishermen. So, it takes a lot, and it takes a lot of patience, but the enthusiasm and encouragement that Kyle has is just infectious for us, and we really encourage you to give him a call. We'll put the information up on this podcast, and actually at the end I'll have you say it so they can make sure that if they're not watching it, they can actually hear you say it, and they'll get your phone number and that sort of thing. But yeah, Kyle's does a fantastic job out there. Let's talk about baits themselves and what you're using, and what what options there are out there for that.
Yes, sir.
When you're live scoping.
Yeah. So it's going to depend on the time of year. A lot of my focus. So basically, when they start to get in that winter pattern, I'm done live bait, which I like, because I don't have to worry about getting bait. And I finally got a bait tank. So I think I mentioned to you I was going to get it. I finally got a bait tank at my house.
Good for you.
I finally got a bait tank at my house, and I got a lot of minnows out there right now, where it's nice being able to wake up in the morning, scoop it, put it in a bucket, and I'm good.
Yeah.
But in the wintertime, especially just getting your hands cold all the time, and it's nice to have the gloves. I don't got to worry about bait. Right. I don't worry about bait in the wintertime.
Right.
In the wintertime, we'll say December through, I would honestly probably say April, early April. I'm only using jigs. Now, how I'm running these jigs is really going to depend. Sometimes I'll run 2 16th-ounce jigs, double loop knot. I think it's called the Kentucky rig, is like when you have multiple jigs, when you're casted out. But I run 2 16th-ounce, depending on the depth of water. That will also help your fall rate, right? If you notice these fish are finicky, I'll downsize. I won't run 2 16ths. Sometimes I'll run a 16th and a 32nd. Sometimes I'll just run 1 16th. And when they were finicky out there with us, Chris, we ran 1/32nd, which is not easy, because that's a really, really light jig.
Yeah, it sure is.
I'm at the point now where I'm pouring my own jigs, so I'm not. If there's any company out there that wants to help me, like, great. But it got to the point where I'm losing so many jigs, that I'm just pouring myself, and I don't care if I lose them, because they're so cheap when I'm doing it myself at that point.
What about colors?
Colors. So I will. That's really going to depend on the clarity of the water. I will tell you that a chartreuse in the wintertime, and I've even noticed like a black or purple work really well. And then obviously your natural colors, your whites and your pinks. My favorite is a pink jig head with a pink and white zipper minnow, which the Badass Baits zipper minnow I was telling you about. Out of Michigan. His name is Matt Nevison. He's been a huge supporter, and I mean, I've got thousands of these things. Where I don't have to worry about running out, and we will go through them when we are wrecking them.
Right.
Especially in the winter, you see a lot of people on the bridges, for example, where we call it the flotilla, where you'll see, I think at one point I saw 32 boats around the bridge at one point. It's crazy. It's not my favorite, but that's where the fish are. I'm going to do what I got to do to put my clients on fish. And, we had a good stretch there. We had over 100 fish on those trips, and they were all on that bait right there. It's the only plastic I run.
Right.
To be honest with you, not just because he supports me, but like I believe in the bait, like, and I've caught a lot of fish on them, a lot of really big fish on them. Now, when I'm live scoping, we start to get in the springtime. I'll use my live scope when I'm long lining. Sometimes I'm not going for those individual fish, and I have some clients who maybe they're more novice, fishermen, fisherwomen, and it gets to a point where it's just not realistic for me to spend the time. Now, I'll help them if they want to, but if it gets to, I don't want my clients to get frustrated. I want them to have a good time, catch fish. That's really what they're there for. I'll use a live scope to see what depth are they at, while also using my down imaging, and I'll run those jigs different depths. And really in the springtime, that black and purple that we were using, or purple and silver, were the ticket. With a little bit dirtier water. And then once it kind of cleaned up a little bit, your whites, your pinks, those baits really, really played this spring. And then summertime, it don't matter.
Right.
They'll get to a point where they'll get on structure, and you throw it over that structure, and they're all coming. It don't matter the color. Now that's kind of something to focus on if you're trying to get some of those bigger fish, though. They're going to typically be on the outsides of the structure. Let's say it's a brush pile or rock pile. You have fish stacked on top of it. Your bigger fish are typically going to be on the outside because there's so much competition. And these little fish, there's times on live scope where you'll watch, like, that's a really, really good fish right there. A little fish will come out of nowhere and eat that bait. They're so fast.
Right.
So these big ones are smart enough. They've gotten big enough to know that they got to work on the outsides of these schools of fish, the structure, the bait balls to be able to feed, effectively. And that's where, throwing those jigs and using live scope and picking off those fish can really, really pay off. And, fishing the kind of the tournament scene this past, spring, I fished a few this spring that were great. That was the key to getting some of those really big bites. And that tournament scene is pretty fun. And I'm very competitive, so I enjoy getting into that and using live scope and understanding what these fish are doing and leveraging it to my advantage.
The whole way targeting the big ones.
Yeah.
For those tournaments, you got to have that.
Getting those big ones, and that was the key. One of the very first ones that I fished, I saw this one fish out by himself, just in a perfect, right over the river channel. And she was sitting there just up in the water column. And as soon as I cast that thing over to her, she came up and absolutely inhaled it. And that was almost a 2.5 pounder. That one, I got first place big fish in that tournament. That was a really, really good fish. And I lost 2 more that were over 2 pounds. And they say shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? But if I could have boated those fish, I would have won that tournament. So those hurt. As soon as I lost those fish at the boat, one of them I went to go get him with the net and pop that fish off, and that hurt. And another one, as soon as I set the hook, just popped right off. But those were the winning fish for that tournament. And but leveraging that live scope and knowing where they are, where they're moving, how they're not moving, is what I'm really doing to learn, because I'm learning that day. What do these fish want to do? Because not every day is going to be the same.
Now, talking back on the live scope and understanding what you're looking at, because I saw that. I was looking at some fish there, and I was like, oh, that looks like a good fish. And Kyle's like, no, this is what you want there. And so we started to learn that. But I also remember we got over a creek channel, and all those fish were like really tight to the bottom. And I would have never saw them, but you knew what you were looking at. It's just like maybe little bumps here or there. But then after we brought that bait down there, all of a sudden we see the fish come up to them, which was really cool. So creek, that time of year, that seemed to be a place where they were pretty stacked in there, pretty good.
We had that little bit of warm weather that morning it was cold in the morning, and it started to warm up, and those fish started moving those creeks. And, that area, the big ones hadn't gotten there yet. Those were, some smaller, just schooly type crappie fish, your typical, 8 to 11 inch crappie in there. I think we had a couple in there that were maybe pushing a little over 12, 12 inches, which is a great panfish. That's a great crappie. And that just comes with experience and seeing. And I could see them on my down imaging, my down scan. I could see those little blips. And I will tell anyone that wants to get out there and use live scope, even if you have live scope on the boat, if you are not good, and I don't mean like amazing, if you're not at least good with your graph at the console, with your down imaging and side imaging and learning your mapping, learn that first before you go spend all your time on live scope. Right. Because you will waste so much time on live scope just looking around and scanning. And like, to me, that's not fun. I don't want to just sit there and try to find fish with live scope.
Right.
It's amazing, like a good feeling that I've spent the time to learn my graphs, where it's like I can see a big group out there about 40 feet out off to the side. Or in that case, Chris, where we were out there, I could say, I said, listen, they're right there on the bottom, but they're really tight. And then you put the live scope out there, and sure enough, you cast that jig over there, and here comes 3, 4, 5 of them come up, and we were catching fish. And that's experience. That's time on the water, and that's the type of stuff that people come out for trips. They enjoy, because I can help cut that learning curve. What are you looking at? Why are they here? And that's the type of feedback that I get. Is I don't care if I catch fish. I want to learn, and I love those trips, because those are the real teaching trips where I'm sharing my knowledge and experience.
Well, there's so much to be done or to learn with crappie fishing, and it seems like it's a panfish that has a following beyond anything that I've ever seen before. I mean, there's shellcracker fishermen and there are bluegill fishermen, but the crappie fishermen. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen a bluegill tournament.
Yeah, I haven't. Not that I know.
I'm sure
definitely
there
not
are.
around here.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are somewhere. But
the crappie fishing is just such a thing here from north to south. I mean, Louisiana right on up into the north. And I used to ask the question, I was like, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
And now that I've, really had an opportunity to fish them, and then, we're talking about finesse fishing to a degree, you're trying to coax a fish into eating, reactionary bites, putting it where they want. Because we've done it with just regular, we've done it out at Falls Lake. So we went up to, or Kerr Lake,
Yep.
went up to Carr Lake, I should say. We've been over there fishing with Chris Bullock, and he started using live scope there toward the end, but he was using just regular depth finders.
Yep.
And the strategy that he had for that is just amazing, And so and I love to eat them. So there's just nothing I can say bad about the crappie.
They're beautiful fish too.
And they're beautiful. They are beautiful.
They're
I can catch them
gorgeous.
right down the street there at the little lake here by the office.
Okay.
Dark green,
Yeah.
black. They have so much black in them, and then the iridescent blues and
best.
purples and everything. It's just what a beautiful fish.
That's my favorite part of it is the iridescent. Even though, fun fact, I am colorblind, so there is some things where it's like some people are like, oh yeah, this or that, or what about like this color or that color?
yeah,
It's like,
you're not seeing it.
Is there a label on that package? Because that's the only way I know if it's green or red.
Right,
right. So, but yeah, they are beautiful fish, and I was wondering the same thing. I was like, they're just a panfish, like,
Right.
but they get big, and this live scope, being able to target them and trying to get these ones that are over 2 pounds. That is fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, especially ultralight, 4 or 6 pound test line on an ultralight rod. It's like I said, I just love catching fish, and it's a blast, especially when you go out there and you can catch. We had one trip last August on a trip that I had my clients during that trip. Now that was a half day trip. We caught 120 fish in that one trip. I mean, he brought his son, and they were just having an absolute ball. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, man, I love it. I love it. Well, it's been fantastic talking to Kyle about the trip that we took, but also learning a little bit more about him. I was kind of up to speed on the story, but there were some things that I learned there. And I want to encourage you, if you're wanted to experience crappie fishing and catching fish, and Kyle is definitely someone you need to give a call. We have the information here. So Kyle, go ahead and tell us how they can get in contact with you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so the best way to get in contact with me is just a call. Give me a call or follow me on Facebook. Farwell Fishing Guide Service on Facebook. I'm really responsive. Send me a message. If you're interested in a trip, if there's something that you want to learn, on the trip or whatever, message me on Facebook. You can also send me an email, Kyle, Kyle, at farwellfishing.com. Now it's FARWELL fishing. Some people put an E after the R. So if you do that, it won't come to me. So Kyle at FARWELL fishing.com. And then you can also call or text 603-667-7571. I still got that New Hampshire number, so I'll give people a call. And they're like, I didn't think it was you because I saw a New Hampshire number. So yeah, that's the best way. But give me a follow on Facebook. I try to be as helpful as I can, posting what am I doing, where am I catching them, and that's the best way to keep up with me in terms of what I'm doing and how we're doing out there. And right now, I mean, we're in May all the way through to even early November. Mm-hmm. That bite is going to be on. And so it's a great time to book now, get on the calendar because it's starting. I'm experiencing that great. I'm booking out, starting to book several months out, depending on the time of year. And that bite, especially for kids, is really good this time of year through into the fall.
Yeah. And so you're set up to handle kids pretty well.
Yeah. We actually I had a trip 3 days ago where I had it was the grandfather, his son, and then his grandson. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
And he was 5 years old, brought him out there. He'd never caught a fish by himself. At that point, I was helping cast, and he was, as soon as that cork would go down, he'd reel it in. It was his first crappie that he'd ever caught, and he was just loving it.
Put
the fish in the live well. He's having fun in the live well, and yeah, it's a good time. So it can take kids. Generally can take people. Comfortably 4 people plus myself. I can do more. My only caution is that it gets a little tight when I get 5 or 6 because my captain's license allows for up to 6 guests, and then myself. So
yeah, that's pretty tight.
Yeah, it's pretty tight. It's 6 adults.
Got a big boat, but it's still there's a lot of hooks flying.
Yeah,
that way.
It gets a little dangerous, you know. So but I can do it, So but yeah, don't hesitate to reach out and we'll get out there and slay them.
Well, that is so awesome. I'm so glad that Kyle made it in to talk with us. He was actually taking his boat in for a checkup over at Chatley, which is just around the corner. And Chatley Boat and Marine does a fantastic job on the boats, and this is an Avid boat that he has, and so we really enjoyed it. Love the color on that thing.
Yeah.
Very, very unique. So I think people recognize Kyle on the water now pretty easily there. But we've been talking with Kyle Farwell of Farwell Fishing. He gave the information there about how to get in contact with him, and you heard that he can handle you if you've got a fairly large group and you've got some kids along, which is great, and I would recommend that. And you're going to learn something when you go with him, so I would absolutely 100% take the time and go with Kyle, either on Jordan or Harris, but Jordan's been the one recently.
Jordan's been the one, but now this weather's getting right. Harris is going to turn on pretty soon, and that bite on either or is going to be really good.
People's going to be all over it.
Yep.
Well, that wraps up this edition of Carolina All Out Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast. Hey, don't forget to catch us on the Pursuit channel 4 times a week starting in July. We got some new episodes coming up. We're really excited about that. And Kyle's is going to be one of those, so you'll get a chance to see this episode that we've been talking about at that time. I'm Chris Douglas, signing off, and we hope that you will make our state your next adventure.
Step by step, I walked 100 miles and I still.
Hey, make sure you watch Carolina All Out on our YouTube channel and catch us on Alive TV Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. And coming this summer, we'll be airing nationally on the Pursuit channel 4 times a week, spreading the good news to all who will listen about our great state and what she has to offer. At some point in your life, I'm betting you have probably thrown a piece of bait on a hook into one of our great state's 7 amazing sounds. If you have, you know how magical they are. Well, that magic is under threat and has been for a long time. That's where the North Carolina Marine and Estuary Foundation comes in, an organization dedicated to improving management practices, educating the public, and developing practical solutions. They want to see North Carolina become the premier fishing destination in the country. And I do too. Visit ncmeffoundation.org to learn more about this wonderful organization and how you can do your part in protecting the 7 jewels of North Carolina and a whole lot more.
Chatley Boat and Marine, the largest Carolina skiff and Suzuki outboards dealer in America. With over 71,000 square feet of indoor showrooms and an on-site test lake, Chatley is the destination for your next boat purchase. Fishing or family fun on the water? Chatley has you covered with the latest in electronics and water toys for the summer. Need service? Chatley's Parts and Service Department can fix your boat. Find Carolina Skiff powered by Suzuki Outboards at Chatley Boat and Marine, the South's premier boating superstore.